He moved on, right? Fast. Like you never mattered. Like everything you built together meant nothing. And you're sitting there wondering, how could he replace me so easily? But here's the truth. Most people won't tell you. It wasn't love he moved on from. It was access. What he's chasing now isn't better. It's easier. Easier to control. Easier to impress. Easier to forget. But you were the challenge. You were the soul stretch he wasn't ready for. And instead of rising, he ran. Let's get one thing straight. A man who can move on quickly didn't lose interest overnight. He lost respect slowly. Not because you weren't enough, but because somewhere along the way, you started making him the prize, instead of remembering you always were. And now he's with someone else, hoping that this time he can feel powerful again. But that power, that feeling, it doesn't come from her. It came from your presence. This video is not about chasing. It's not about revenge. It's about reclaiming your energy, your dignity, your identity. Because the only way to truly make him beg for you back is to stop begging for him in your mind. So sit tight, because in this video I'm going to walk you through the exact steps that flip the script, shift the energy, and make the man who left you question everything he thought he knew about you. This time, you're the one who disappears and becomes unforgettable. They may look happy on the outside, smiling in new photos, flaunting a rebound like a trophy. But let me tell you something real. Men often don't come back because they're lonely. They come back because they remember. They remember how they felt when they were with you. They remember who they were in your presence. The version of themselves that felt understood, admired, wanted. The truth is, men don't attach to moments the same way women do. They attach to impact. And when a woman truly touches a man's soul, not just his body, not just his ego, she leaves a mark he can't shake off. Sure, he might try to distract himself. He might chase a new connection, looking for the same emotional high you gave him. But over time, he starts noticing the subtle differences. She laughs, but it doesn't reach her eyes like yours did. She listens, but she doesn't see him the way you did. She touches him, but it doesn't feel like home. And that's when it hits him. He left gold, thinking it was just glitter. What men don't always realize in the moment is that love isn't about who looks good next to them in pictures. It's about who holds space for their soul to rest. You did that, and that memory lingers. They come back not because they're suddenly enlightened. They come back because life has a way of exposing what's real. And you, my dear, were real in a world full of temporary. Even if he's with someone else, even if he seems moved on, even if he says, I'm happy now, there's a part of him quiet, buried, that still hears your voice, still replays your laugh, still wonders, did I make the right choice? And that question alone is the beginning of his return. But here's the twist. By the time he realizes it, you won't be waiting. You'll be glowing. And that glow, that's what pulls him back. Not desperation, but your evolution. After a breakup, especially when he's already with someone else, your heart screams for closure, for answers, for validation, for something to ease the silence. And in that emotional whirlwind, most women make a critical mistake. They chase. Not always physically. Sometimes it's emotional. It's checking his social media every night, hoping he misses you. It's responding too quickly when he finally texts, even though he left you shattered. It's posting that perfect story, not because you feel strong, but because you want him to see it. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time you act from a place of emotional desperation, you teach him that he's still in control. And nothing kills attraction faster than the loss of power and mystery. The mistake isn't that you cared. The mistake is thinking that love means proving your worth to someone who already questioned it. You see, men are wired to value what feels rare, what feels earned. When you make yourself too available, too emotionally exposed, too present after he's left, you unknowingly remove the tension that once made you magnetic. It's the texts that say I miss you when he hasn't earned that access. It's the long emotional paragraphs hoping you'll understand how much you love him. It's pretending to be okay with just being friends when your heart is still breaking. You think you're showing strength by staying connected, but real strength is in disappearing with dignity. When a woman holds back, when she reclaims her power and stops feeding his ego, it creates a void. And that void, that silence, that's what gets to him. Not the message, not the crying, not the chase. It's the absence. Because here's the part men don't expect, that the woman they once took for granted will actually walk away and become someone better, someone unavailable, someone he no longer has access to. That's the moment regret begins. But the biggest mistake women make is thinking they need to win him back. You don't win a man's love by losing yourself. You win by standing still while he runs in circles, realizing the one thing he couldn't replace was the woman who stopped chasing. So don't beg, don't break, don't bargain. because the woman who says nothing is often the loudest memory he'll ever carry. There's a kind of power most women never tap into. Not because they don't have it, but because they've been taught to prove their value instead of embodying it. The silent attraction method flips that script. It's not about talking louder. It's about becoming quieter, more intentional, more self-possessed while letting your absence speak volumes. Most people think attraction is built through interaction, through words, through visibility. But true magnetic power, that energy that draws someone in long after you've left the room, that lives in silence. When you stop trying to be seen by him, you become unforgettable to him. Because silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. Silence is mystery. Silence forces the mind to fill in the blanks. And human psychology hates blank spaces. We're wired to solve puzzles, to seek resolution. So when you go quiet, when you stop explaining yourself, stop justifying your feelings, stop trying to be reasonable in the face of his disrespect, his mind begins to wander. And that wandering, that's the spark. He starts replaying moments, wondering what you're thinking, questioning if you've moved on. That silence becomes louder than any argument you could have thrown at him. You see, the silent attraction method is not passive. It's not weakness. It's a strategy rooted in strength and deep feminine energy. It's saying, I don't chase, I attract. And if you can't feel my absence, then you never deserved my presence. It's becoming so secure in your worth that your energy speaks without a single word. It's when you don't respond to breadcrumbs or late night I miss you texts. Don't try to post to prove you're happy. You actually focus on becoming happy. Don't ask mutual friends about him. You trust the silence to do what your words never could. The shift happens when he realizes the emotional access he once had to you is gone. Not blocked, not angrily cut off, just unavailable. Calmly, powerfully, completely. And that's when his curiosity morphs into desire. Because you're no longer predictable. You're no longer reactive. You're no longer in orbit around him. You've become what every man is subconsciously drawn to. A woman who moves with or without him. The silent attraction method also disrupts his ego. He expects you to fall apart, to reach out, to crack first. So when you don't, when you become even more composed, even more radiant, he begins to question himself. Did I overestimate her feelings for me? Why isn't she texting me? Who has her attention now? And those thoughts become the seeds of obsession. Here's what you need to remember. Silence doesn't mean doing nothing. It means redirecting your energy away from him and back to you. Invest in yourself. Glow up mentally, emotionally, physically. Let your evolution become the answer to every question he's afraid to ask. Because at the end of the day, attraction isn't just about being desired. It's about being remembered. And the woman who practices silent attraction never has to chase anyone. She simply becomes the echo they can't escape. Power in relationships isn't about control. It's about influence. And right now, whether you realize it or not, he holds most of it. Not because he's stronger, not because he's better, but because somewhere along the line, you started measuring your worth based on his behavior. Shifting the power dynamic begins the moment you stop reacting and start responding from self-worth instead of fear of loss. Here's what you need to understand. When he left, when he chose someone else, ignored your messages, played hot and cold, it wasn't just his actions that stung. It was the unspoken message behind them. I have the upper hand. And you believed it. You internalized his silence as superiority, his distance as disinterest, his detachment as proof that you were replaceable. But what if I told you the real reason he felt so powerful is because you gave him that power? Shifting the dynamic starts with reclaiming the one thing you always had, but forgot to protect: your emotional leverage. The more emotionally predictable you are, the easier it is for him to stay detached. But the moment you shift, when you start showing restraint, when you stop explaining yourself, when you begin choosing your peace over performance, everything changes. He's no longer sure what you're thinking. He's no longer certain of your availability. He's no longer able to use your love as a safety net. And that uncertainty, that's how the power starts to tip. Because what most people don't realize is, the person who's less afraid to walk away holds the most power. And when you emotionally detach, not from a place of bitterness, but from clarity, you become untouchable in the best way. It's not about ignoring him to manipulate him. It's about choosing yourself so unapologetically that he's forced to ask what changed. You don't beg for his attention. You elevate your standards. You don't chase closure. You become the closure. You don't ask him to see your worth. You embody it and let his loss reveal it. Power returns when you remove your energy from his validation and pour it back into your own transformation. Think of it like this. Every time you don't respond to his inconsistent behavior, you're resetting the dynamic. Every time you don't react emotionally to his games, you're shifting the frame. Every time you say no to breadcrumbs, you say yes to your future self. The woman who refuses to settle for emotional leftovers. Eventually he'll feel the shift. That same man who thought he had you on a leash will start checking if you still care. Not because you tried to convince him, but because you stopped needing to. And when that moment comes, when he senses your power has returned, that's when he starts to feel off balance. Because deep down men know, a woman in her power isn't loud. She's composed. She's clear. She doesn't fight for attention, because she is the attention. So stop trying to flip the script by rewriting him. Rewrite you. Because the moment you stop fighting for a seat at his table, you become the table he wants to sit at. There's something most people don't understand about the human mind. We don't remember days, we remember moments, tiny flashes, fleeting feelings, glimpses that hit like waves when we least expect them. And that's exactly how emotional memory works. Men especially aren't wired to dwell on the past like women often are. But they do remember how a woman made them feel in those quiet, invisible moments they didn't even know mattered at the time. And when you know how to trigger those memories, you unlock a power most women overlook. He may have forgotten what you said. He may not recall every fight, every plan, every conversation. But he feels something, a sensation that rises up when he hears a certain song, smells a certain perfume, sees a certain kind of smile that almost reminds him of yours. That's not nostalgia, that's an emotional imprint. When a woman touches a man on a deeper level, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, she creates a blueprint inside him. He might try to override it with distractions, new partners, fake confidence, but memory isn't polite. It shows up uninvited, crashes through his silence when he's lying next to someone else. It whispers your name in the gaps where connection used to be. To trigger those memories, you don't have to reach out, you don't have to say anything. You simply have to become a reminder of everything he now lacked. He remembers the way you looked at him when he didn't feel like enough, but you still made him feel like he was. He remembers how you noticed things no one else did, the way his voice changed when he was hiding pain, the way his hands fidgeted when he was nervous. He remembers the way your presence made the world quieter. And that's where the power lives, not in begging him to remember, but in becoming the kind of woman who leaves emotional fingerprints on his soul. It's not about pretending you're fine or trying to make him jealous. It's about becoming the woman he used to dream about and now realizes he lost. It's about rising without resentment, healing without needing closure, and radiating a version of you that doesn't need him but once chose him. That's what haunts a man, not anger, not sadness, but grace. The kind of grace that walks away, builds itself quietly, and glows so brightly it blinds the man who didn't look closely enough before. And here's the secret. Emotional memory is most powerful when it's left unresolved. When you don't explain, when you don't return his call, when you stop being his comfort zone and start becoming his what if. You let the silence hold the weight of everything he lost. And while he may try to recreate it, copy it, chase it, he won't find it, because you were never just a moment, you were a feeling. And feelings, real ones, don't fade, they echo. And the deeper the memory, the harder it hits when it returns. So don't chase him, trigger him, not with words but with your evolution. Because long after you're gone, the part of you that touched his soul, that never leaves. There's a certain kind of heartbreak that hits you in silence. It doesn't scream, it doesn't cry out loud, it just sinks. That moment when you see him with her, smiling, laughing, touching her the way he used to touch you. It's like the ground disappears beneath your feet. Time slows, your stomach tightens. And even if you told yourself you were over him, something about seeing it makes it real, uncomfortably real. Your mind spirals. Does he love her more? Was I ever enough? Was everything he said to me just a phase? But here's the truth, what you're feeling in that moment is not about them, it's about you. It's your body processing the grief of a story you didn't want to end. And that's okay. It's human to ache. It's human to miss what once felt like home. But it's also human to choose your power even in the middle of that pain. Because what you do in that moment when you see him with someone else, says more about your growth than anything he's doing. Don't compare. Don't shrink. Don't think for 1 second that her presence means your value has decreased. Another woman's gain is not your loss. You are not in competition with her. You are in transition within yourself. You don't know what's behind their smile. You don't know if he's repeating old patterns, using her as a distraction, or simply playing pretend to numb the part of him that still aches for you in ways he'll never admit. What you do know is that you're healing. You're the one facing the pain instead of running from it. You're the one choosing to grow rather than chase. You're the one walking away with grace, even when everything inside you wants to scream. And that is rare. Let him have his moment. Let them play out whatever version of happy they've chosen. It doesn't define you, because your peace is not built on his presence. Your worth is not measured by who holds his hand now. Your future is not tied to a man who couldn't see the rare soul standing in front of him. You don't have to fake a smile. You don't have to pretend it doesn't hurt. But you do have to remember who the hell you are. You're not broken. You're becoming. You're not forgotten. You're being freed. And if he can't recognize your value, if he needed someone else to move on, that's not your wound to carry. That's his. So when you see him with her, breathe, stand tall, look once, then look away. Because real power is in the restraint. Real confidence is not in confrontation. It's in quiet detachment. Let him feel your absence, not your reaction. Let your silence speak what your words no longer need to explain. And when you walk away, whether he sees it or not, know that you just passed one of the hardest emotional tests a woman can face. And you passed with strength he will never forget. Because one day, he will realize the depth of what he lost. But by then you'll be long gone. Not bitter, not broken, just better. Every powerful comeback begins in silence. Not the silence of defeat, but the silence of transformation. When the world thinks you're done, when he assumes you're shattered, when they all believe you've faded quietly into the background, that's when the real work begins. You don't announce your comeback, you build it piece by piece, breath by breath, beneath the surface where no one's watching. Because the most unforgettable comebacks aren't loud, they're undeniable. It starts with one simple but radical decision. You stop trying to prove your worth to someone who couldn't recognize it the first time. That's step one. Internal disconnect. You stop checking his socials. You stop replaying the what ifs. You stop stalking her page. Because every click, every scroll, every second you spend watching him is a second you've abandoned you. And you are the main character now. Next, you reclaim your mirror. You take back your physical presence, not to impress him, not to get his attention, but to fall back in love with the woman who was always underneath the heartbreak. Start moving. Walk, dance, lift, run, not to become smaller but to feel stronger. Change your hair, your clothes, your posture, not for revenge, but to feel new in your own skin. Then rebuild your rhythm. Create a life that has structure again, even in the smallest ways. Wake up early, read something that feeds your mind. Drink water like it's medicine. Speak kindly to yourself, even when it feels fake, because repetition turns rituals into reality. That's the secret sauce of the comeback. Consistency without applause. You show up for yourself, even when no one else does. You clap for yourself, even when no one notices. You become your own sanctuary, so no man can ever make you feel homeless in your own heart again. And now comes the emotional reset. You stop personalizing the pain. You stop blaming yourself for his choice. You stop romanticizing a version of him that only existed in your hopes, not in his actions. You see the relationship for what it was, not what you needed it to be. And you forgive yourself for staying too long. Not because it was weak, but because you loved deeply. That's not shameful. That's beautiful. But now, it's over. And from that acceptance rises your final step. Energy redirection. You stop obsessing over being wanted, and you focus on becoming unforgettable. You pour into your purpose, into your creativity, into the people who actually see you. You use every ounce of heartbreak as fuel. Because the best revenge is never a reaction, it's a rebirth. And here's what makes the comeback formula so powerful. By the time he realizes what he lost, by the time he texts you, calls you, stalks your stories, asks mutual friends about you, you won't even be the same woman anymore. He'll reach for a version of you that no longer exists because you've evolved, you've healed, you've outgrown the very dynamic that once held you hostage. And that is how you win. Not by taking him back, but by taking yourself further than he ever imagined possible. So don't rush it. Don't try to show him. Just show up every day for yourself, quietly, fiercely, relentlessly, and one day you'll look back and realize the moment you thought it was all falling apart was the exact moment you were being rebuilt. That's the formula, and baby, it worked. There comes a moment, after all the pain, the silence, the nights you cried quietly into your pillow so no one would hear, when something shifts. It's not loud, it doesn't come with fireworks or applause, but it's real, it's subtle, it's strong. It's the moment you realize you hold the power now, not because you manipulated, not because you begged, not because you tried to win him back, but because you stopped needing him to come back at all. Power doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it doesn't demand closure or explanations or one last conversation to make sense of it all. True power chooses peace over performance. And when a woman chooses peace, when she decides that her healing is more important than his attention, everything changes. You see, the version of you that was desperate for answers, for apologies, for validation, she wasn't weak, she was just wounded. She was reaching for something familiar, even if it hurt, because sometimes pain feels safer than letting go. But now you're not reaching anymore. You're rising, and as you rise, you begin to see things differently. You see that his silence wasn't proof that you weren't enough. It was proof that he couldn't handle your depth. You see that walking away wasn't a loss, it was a liberation. You see that what looked like rejection was actually redirection into a life where you are no longer asking to be chosen, because you're doing the choosing now. And here's the part no one tells you. When you truly reclaim your power, you don't even want them back. Because the version of you that begged, that waited, that broke herself just to hold someone else's attention, she deserved so much more. And you finally decided to give it to her. So let him stay where he is. Let her hold his hand. Let the world keep spinning, however it needs to. You're no longer controlled by what he does or doesn't feel. You're free. Free to love yourself louder. Free to rewrite the story. Free to walk into rooms without shrinking your light for someone else's comfort. This is the chapter where you stop explaining. Stop chasing. Stop apologizing for the strength you had to build in the fire he left you in. Because what he didn't realize is that by walking away, he awakened the most powerful version of you. A woman who knows who she is. A woman who doesn't need closure because she gave it to herself. A woman who doesn't wait for someone to come back because she's too busy moving forward. And maybe one day he'll look back and realize what he lost. Maybe he'll feel that ache, the one that whispers your name in quiet moments. But by then he won't be missing the woman he left. He'll be haunted by the woman he'll never get to meet again. You hold the power now, not because you took it from him, but because you finally stopped giving it away. And that's the most beautiful part of your comeback. You didn't just survive it, you owned it. So lift your head, straighten your crown. Walk like a woman who remembers who she is, because your story isn't over, it's just beginning.